So, hello and welcome once again to this morning's webinar on 10 Warning Signs of Alzheimer's presented by our friends at the Alzheimer's Association. My name is Natalia Rodriguez, and I am the bilingual education specialist here with PSS Circle of Care. Um, just to give you a little bit of an overview of PSS, if you're new to us, we are an innovative multi-service agency whose mission is to strengthen the capacity of older New Yorkers, their families, and communities to thrive. PSS Circle of Care provides free support for those who are caring for someone who is frail, chronically ill, or is experiencing memory loss, and for families where a grandparent or a family member other than a parent is raising a grandchild. The free services that we offer are consultations, support groups, education and training such as this one, wellness events, respite opportunities, supplemental services, information assistance, and advocacy. For further information about PSS and the services that we provide, please feel free to contact us via the email that will be posted on the chat box shortly. Just as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our resources page at pssusa.org/events and on our YouTube channel. Should any questions come up during the presentation, we ask that you submit them in the Q&A section of your screen for an opportunity to have them answered by our panelists during the Q&A portion of our event. So without further ado, we are joined once again by Joon Her and Cynthia Perthews of the Alzheimer's Association. Welcome to you both. Joon, I'll hand it over to you for the rest of the presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Natalia. And welcome, everyone. Welcome again. I do see some very familiar names. Saw some of y'all last week. And for those who are new today, welcome, welcome. Today, we will be talking about some warning signs of Alzheimer's. Again, just a quick introduction of myself. My name is Joon. I'm the program manager at the Alzheimer's Association New York City chapter. Do a lot of these education programs, also do care consulting. I also do a lot of resource and information referrals too. So lots of good stuff I do. Oh, at least I like to think so. I do want to, again, for those who just joined, we will be having time at the end for Q&A. So we do ask that you keep your mics muted until the end. And then also, if you have any questions, you can also put it in the chat box as well. Great. So those are just some few housekeeping rules. And a quick introduction of myself. Now I do want to introduce my colleague, Cynthia, who will do her own introduction and get started.
Great. Thank you so much, Joon. Today we're going to talk about the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's, and let me share my screen and get us over to our... So let me give you a brief introduction of who I am, and I see some familiar faces both from New York and then from my other residence, which is in Florida today, and I appreciate all of you all coming. So my name is Cynthia Perthews. I own a company called Senior Care Authority, and we deal with people who need some places to live or need to stay at home. Most of our clients have some form of dementia. And I like to tell the story here of how I got into this business. And I got into this business because my father died with Alzheimer's in 2016. My grandmother died with Alzheimer's. My great-grandmother died with senility. And we know that those are all the same disease, but they didn't call them those. They called them those various names. And now we know it's Alzheimer's. And I also have what's called an APOE4 gene, which gives me a little bit higher percentage of getting this disease than the general public. So I embrace what I do with the Alzheimer's Association as a way to help raise funds for the research and also to give back into this community that really made such a big difference in our lives, in my life when I was dealing with my father. So today I represent the Alzheimer's Association, and we're going to talk about the 10 warning signs. And this is a very important part of knowing and understanding this disease so that you can figure out, and we're going to talk about, am I getting old, or do I have some form of dementia, or my loved one? So today we're going to learn about what is dementia, what is Alzheimer's disease, and why is it important to know the signs. Those are the things that are important to us. So by the end of today's program, the goal is for you to be able to describe the typical age-related memory, thinking, or behavior changes. The goal is to be able to recognize common warning signs of Alzheimer's and dementia, discuss the tips for approaching someone with memory concerns, explain the importance of early detection and the benefits of diagnosis, identify possible tests and assessments for the diagnostic process, and name the resources available through the Alzheimer's Association.
Dementia is the umbrella term for an individual's changes in memory, thinking, or reasoning. There are many possible causes of dementia, and Alzheimer's is the most common cause. Other causes of dementia are vascular dementia, which is marked by changes in the blood flow and the blood vessels in the brain. Dementia with Lewy bodies, identified by specific brain changes throughout the brain that include the buildup of a protein known as alpha-synuclein. And frontal temporal dementia, which is marked by brain cell loss in the front sections of the brain or the frontal lobe. Each type of dementia may have distinct characteristics to cause specific behaviors in the individual, but there is also some overlap in behaviors among the types of dementia.
So you may have heard the terms dementia and Alzheimer's used interchangeably. So we're going to hear from some more experts about what are the significant differences between those two.
More than 100 years ago, Dr. Alzheimer described specific changes in the brain, what we now call the formation of plaques and tangles. Alzheimer's is a progressive brain disease that's marked by these key changes and impacts memory, thinking, and behavior. The brain has three main parts: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. Each one plays a role in how the body functions. Alzheimer's disease causes nerve cells to die, which leads to brain tissue loss and causes loss of function and communication between cells. These changes can cause the symptoms of Alzheimer's, such as memory loss, behavioral issues, problems with thinking, planning, and at the end stage, swallowing.
As we heard there, Alzheimer's is our most common form of dementia, and it accounts for about 60 to 80% of the cases. So now let's hear about the importance of really knowing what those signs are.
It's important to know what the warning signs of Alzheimer's are and to be on the lookout. We know that we change over time, and the warning signs of Alzheimer's can be warning signs of a number of things, but when you see those in yourself or in someone you care about, it's important to check it out, to consult with a doctor, to find out what you're dealing with. Some of the things that can look like Alzheimer's may be other treatable conditions. If it is Alzheimer's, you still want to know as early as possible, because that gives the person and the family time to plan, time to make decisions, and it also gives the person with the disease a voice and allows them to say what they want.
So we like to say, when in doubt, check it out, because some of these signs that we're going to see may affect us because we're older, but they may also affect us because we have dementia. And the Alzheimer's Association has developed a list of 10 signs, and it's to help us understand the difference between normal aging and the common signs. So this list is intended to be a tool to help identify unusual changes in a person's memory, thinking, or behavior. And it's important to note that this list does not constitute a diagnosis. These are simply the most common examples of changes experienced. Individuals may experience one or more of these signs, and in different degrees. They also don't happen in the order that we have listed here. So the first one is not going to be number one always or number two always. Remember that these could happen in a variety of different ways. So let's go to the first one: memory loss that disrupts daily life. This is one of the most common signs of Alzheimer's, especially early on, and that is forgetting recently learned information. And recently is the important word here. So I will have clients who will say to me, my father doesn't have any dementia. He can still remember where he went to first grade. But then when we quiz them a little bit further, he doesn't remember what he had for lunch about an hour ago. So remember that it is the forgetting recently learned information. Others include forgetting important dates or events, repeatedly asking the same question, and increasingly relying on memory aids or leaning on others for things or tasks that were once handled on their own. So a typical age-related change is sometimes forgetting information, but remembering it later. So as you get older, you might forget what you had for lunch, but you're going to remember it a little bit later. Or you might forget something that happened that morning, but you'll remember it. With dementia, that sign might be that you forget what it was, and you can't ever go and recall it, for example. So let's look at number 2. Number 2 is challenges in planning or solving problems. Now, some people may experience new difficulties in executive functioning, including developing or following a plan or difficulty concentrating. Conversely, a more typical age-related change is making occasional errors when managing bills or household finances. So let's hear from John, who lives with dementia with Lewy bodies, about how he experienced this early warning sign.
I was probably spending 4 to 5 times more time preparing for something than I did, say, 5 or 10 years ago, because of the I would lose my thought, I'd lose my focus, I'd get anxious, I wouldn't get to sleep. I was thinking this, I was in my sleep, I was thinking about what I was anxious about, which was I was trying to remember, which was I was trying to prepare, which I was trying to do. So it was really a vicious circle of, so I was able to control it a lot, so that people wouldn't see things, and that there weren't things to be seen. It's what was disturbing me was what effort I had to put into to do the things I used to do more easily.
Number 3, difficulty completing familiar tasks. Now, people living with dementia often find it hard to complete daily tasks that used to be managed with ease, such as driving to a familiar place, writing a grocery list, or remembering how to play a favorite game. Conversely, let's think about what an typical age-related change. It would be occasionally needing help to use a microwave or a remote. This could also include having trouble with new technology that a person hasn't had the opportunity to engage with as frequently. So, for example, I had a client and her daughter called and said, my mother has Alzheimer's. And I said, tell me how you know. And she said she forgets to plug in her iPhone at night. Every single night she forgets to plug the iPhone, and I have to come over and I have to help her with it. And I said, how long has she had the iPhone? And she said, it's brand new. She's only had it for a week. That is probably more typical age-related change. It's new technology. So let's hear a little bit more about this from one of our experts at the Alzheimer's Association.
Some people have difficulty with math or with reading in a way that's unusual to them. And once again, this is a change in that person. So for example, we all know somebody who was never able to balance their checkbook, right? So that wouldn't be a warning sign for them. But if somebody who always balanced their checkbook to the penny suddenly was paying bills, the same bill over and over, and not able to balance their finances, well, that would be a sign for them.
So I also want you to keep in mind as we're listening to these changes, that these changes are also things that affect your daily life. They're things that cause you a problem in living your life. They're not things that just happen that you don't have happen all the time, but they're causing problems. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. So step number 4, or warning sign number 4, is confusion with time or place. So an individual who lives with Alzheimer's or another dementia may lose track of dates, seasons, or the passage of time. They may have trouble understanding something if it's not currently happening, or becoming confused about where they are or how they got there. This can become dramatic or profound in the middle and late stages. Now, on the other hand, a more typical age-related change could be getting confused about what day it is or when a scheduled appointment is, but figuring it out later. So it's my father we used to say, "What day is it?" And he would say, "Every day is Saturday because I'm retired." And we thought it was cute and funny, but he really didn't know what day it was. And so that was something that is confusing with this time and place, and that affects his life. Our fifth warning sign is trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. So, some individuals with Alzheimer's or another dementia may experience vision problems, which can lead to difficulty with balance, trouble reading, and problems judging distance and determining color and contrast, which can all impact driving or navigating the environment around them. Not just driving, but this navigating the environment around them. It can cause problems walking, going upstairs, going from room to room. Now, vision changes such as cataracts are a more typical age-related change. And this sign shows us that these changes within dementia and Alzheimer's are not just about memory. It's important to think about all of the other ways that someone's daily life may be affected by any of these changes. So let's hear from one of our experts.
Alzheimer's disease is not just a disease of memory. It can affect other things too. It can affect the way that we perceive what we see. So sometimes somebody in the early stages of Alzheimer's might go to the eye doctor because they're having trouble seeing, and in fact, their vision is just fine, but the way they're perceiving what they're seeing may be difficult.
Our sixth warning sign is new problems with words in speaking or writing. Individuals may have trouble following or joining a conversation. They may stop in the middle of a conversation and forget what they're talking about, and they continuously repeat themselves. They might also struggle with finding the right word or calling things by the wrong name. They may start using more descriptive terms to talk about something rather than the name of the actual item. We have people who, instead of calling it a watch or a wristwatch, they call it an arm clock. That's a very common use of another name for something that they have been looking at for most of their lives. Let's hear from Phil, who lives with Alzheimer's, about his warning sign.
The other thing that I've increasingly been struggling with are words, which I've dealt with words my entire life, you know, as an avid reader, as a reporter, as a writer. I struggle with them now.
Phil's video makes me so incredibly sad when I see it, because I watch him struggle right there in that video with finding the words. So, warning sign number 7, misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace the steps. So, this sign often causes concern in people. And I want to clarify, this is not just about losing your keys on occasion or misplacing your phone. Misplacing things from time to time, but retracing steps to find them is a normal age-related change. A person with Alzheimer's disease may lose things and not be able to recall when it was last seen or identify the location where it was placed. Or he or she may put things in unusual places, such as putting shoes in the refrigerator. Because of the lack of executive function and awareness, the person may grow increasingly suspicious of others and start accusing others of stealing, and do so more frequently over time. I have a neurologist friend who tells me, if you go to the parking lot and you cannot find your car, that is typical age-related change. But if you go to the parking lot and you're looking for your boat, that is a sign of dementia, and you need to have it checked out. Let's hear also from another one of our experts about this sign, this warning sign.
So some people wonder if, if they lose their keys or their glasses or their purse, is that a sign of Alzheimer's? And one thing that I would say about that is for most of us, we might misplace something, but then if we retrace our steps, we can usually find it. We can usually remember. For a person with Alzheimer's, sometimes they're not able to retrace their steps. Sometimes that memory is just gone. And so when they do find their keys next to the phone because they got interrupted by a phone call when they were coming in, they set their keys down in an unusual space, so there they are next to the phone. If that happened to you or me, we'd probably remember, oh yeah, the phone was ringing when I came in the door. I put down my keys. The person with Alzheimer's might not remember. They might wonder who's moving their keys around because they never put their keys by the phone. So that's just a little bit of a difference in some of the dynamics with losing things in Alzheimer's.
So I'll give you a personal example, something that happened to me this weekend. I had a small group of people over for a small little dinner party on Saturday. So I was very stressed about that. And I was preparing for it on Friday. And I was making a lot of things that involved my hands in dough or in cheese. And I didn't want to have a very important ring that I have. I didn't want that to get gunk in the ring. So I took it off and I placed it someplace that I would remember. And on Saturday morning, as I was in the car going to run some errands, I realized I didn't have my ring on. And I was very upset about it. And as I sat and thought, I remembered I had taken the ring off and I'd put it, of all stupid things, on the post of the food processor so that it would be up out of the way and I would remember where it was. But in the meantime, I'd cleaned up the kitchen and put the food processor away. When I came home, I went straight to the food processor and there was the ring. So that was more typical age-related change. And it also has to do with stress. So those are items that you shouldn't be too frightened about. It's things that you cannot remember and you can't retrace your steps. So warning sign number 8 is decreased or poor judgment. Individuals may experience changes in judgment or decision-making, such as using poor judgment when dealing with money or paying less attention to hygiene and grooming. It can be especially common in individuals who live alone. Now, making a bad decision once in a while, such as forgetting an oil change or putting on a top that you dressed in the dark, you thought it matched your skirt or your pants. Those are things that are just typical age-related changes. But Teresa had some things that were not age-related.
The way I kept my house, and all of a sudden, everything was okay with me. It's like, oh, it's a pile, I'm tired. So my dining room table usually looked like it was someone's office, because I always would say I would do it tomorrow. And then my bedroom, as far as clothing, I would just put it in a corner, put it in a chair. And all of this is just, I wouldn't say it looked like I was a pet wreck, but really I was, because I never threw anything away. I always would say, I'll get to it, but I never did get to it. So just the way of my standard of living, it was actually decreasing.
The 9th warning sign is withdrawal from work or social activities. As we age, it's normal to feel uninterested by family or social engagements at times. I was just talking to Natalia earlier, and she said her parents have 6 grandchildren and that they're thinking this year maybe they'll have Christmas without them. And it's not because they have dementia. Again, this is going to be age-related. They're just tired, and it's hard, and it's difficult. However, someone who's experiencing dementia-related changes may start to lose their ability to hold or follow a conversation. And as a result, they may begin to withdraw from social encounters or hobbies. They may lose confidence in engaging in that way. We see this with men who play golf and have played golf all of their lives. When they begin to have some dementia-related issues, they stop playing golf. And it's because they don't feel comfortable and they don't feel like they can keep up with the people they're playing with. We also see it with women a lot, with bridge of all things. I hear stories on a daily basis of my mom doesn't play bridge anymore. And when you ask her why, she says it's because everyone is cheating. And we know that it has to do with some dementia, as in they're uncomfortable and they're just uncomfortable being in a social situation. So let's hear from an expert.
One of the most common changes and early on is the person's comfort zone shrinks a little bit, and then that gets worse throughout the course of the illness. So they're less comfortable going out, they're less motivated to do things than they were in the past. So there's some change in day-to-day functioning that way. I think people also lose confidence in their cognitive abilities because they may not recognize someone or know their name or find the right word, and they'll feel awkward, and they don't want people to notice that, so they feel more comfortable at home or in situations with family where they're very, very comfortable with that wouldn't concern them. So people tend to withdraw a little bit and be less outgoing. That's can be one of the early signs of Alzheimer's.
So our final warning sign is changes in mood and personality. Individuals with Alzheimer's or another dementia may become confused, suspicious, depressed, fearful, or anxious. They might get easily upset either at home or when they're out of their comfort zone. As we age, however, it's normal to develop very specific ways of doing things and become upset or irritable when our routine is disrupted. Someone with Alzheimer's or dementia may become fearful, angry, or easily frustrated, which is something that should be addressed. They're afraid and frightened of different things. Let's hear Dr. Soloway again.
Another early sign of Alzheimer's or dementia is subtle changes in behavior. So all of a sudden, the family may notice the person is more easily irritated or more impatient or a little moody or have a shorter fuse or more anxious. Now, there's lots of things that can cause that, but often that can be an early symptom of Alzheimer's or go along with the early symptoms of memory loss.
So here's a recap of the 10 warning signs. And what I want you to know is that if any of these signs to any degree are in yourself or someone else, it's important to take action. And these are all warning signs that are just a guide. Remember, they're a guide, and they don't have to experience, you don't have to experience all of them. And again, you don't necessarily experience them in this order, but it's important to discuss these changes with yourself, about yourself, with someone else, and with a doctor. So let's talk about interpreting signs and deciding some next steps. So we have a family, the Garcias, and the daughters are concerned, and they have gone to Dr. Soloway and asked him to do some, they've asked him in our fictitious family to see their mother and see if she can help them. So they text each other, and they're talking about these warning signs that the doctor has given to them.
Memory is not all or none, especially when there are early symptoms or signs. So on a good day, people might function very well and not really even, no one notices there's a memory problem. But on other days, especially if they're tired, then things become more noticeable. So memory is variable. It's not all or none. And then there are different type of symptoms that develop for each person. So some people may have trouble with language, may have trouble with organizing themselves, may have trouble navigating while driving, and other people don't have the same symptoms. So you don't have to have every symptom of Alzheimer's to be concerned. And I think the most important thing is determining what has changed from that person's normal level of functioning. And usually people have a pretty keen sense of, what they can normally do well. And then when either they or the family notice that there has been some change from that usual pattern of functioning, that should be a warning sign to people. But they don't have to check off all the boxes.
So I think that he gave us a really great overcap, and we've talked about this as we've gone through. These are a guide, and you also should see a doctor if you're concerned. Let's talk about the importance of early detection. It's key that we pay attention to what's going on with our own cognitive health and not dismiss any changes that we may be experiencing as normal aging, as well as that of others around us. Any change that's unusual for your level of functioning or that of someone around you is cause for concern. And many times, friends and family are the first to notice changes in someone's memory, behavior, or other abilities. In this next section, we're going to discuss why it's critical to address any observed changes early and seek answers from a medical professional. Sometimes the person that's exhibiting symptoms isn't aware, or they may not have the insight to know that they are experiencing changes, which is why having outside perspective is critical. This is especially important for individuals who live alone or are far from family and friends. Let's listen to the expert again.
You know, it's a very interesting phenomena that people who have memory problems are often less aware of it than family members or their friends who know them well. One of the reasons for that is our ability to monitor ourselves, which is an important part of brain function, decreases when we start having memory problems. Not in everybody, but commonly, and more than half the people with memory problems. And so the person is just not keeping track of the trouble they're having day to day. But the family members are, paying attention. If they're paying attention, they see, boy, this is starting to happen a lot, and the person's not aware of it. So the family's more aware, and they may talk to their loved one about it, and they say, I've noticed you've been repeating yourself. And they say, I'm not repeating myself. And that could either be due to the fact that they're not aware of it, or they may not want to acknowledge it.
Sometimes others will notice it. So we're going to listen to Mary, who is the wife of someone with dementia.
I was so adamant about what was happening to Daryl. I wasn't sure. I didn't know. And this wasn't the person that I know. This wasn't the person. Daryl was my husband was very, he always had to be building or designing or working with his hands. And it was getting to the point where he wasn't, and he was becoming very frustrated when he was forgetting to do things or go places.
So let's think about, as we've seen some of these changes, you need to know that it's critical to plan to take the next step and have a conversation with the person or others close to him or her. This can be a difficult conversation to have. So we talked about the 10 warning signs, and now we're going to talk about 10 helpful steps to help make addressing memory concerns less daunting and more productive. As you move through, you want to think about how this fits into your life and what you should be thinking about. So step 1, what changes in memory, thinking, or behavior do you see? What is the person doing or not doing that's causing concern? These things, you can write them down in a journal and keep a notebook so that you're not confused by them at the end. Sometimes when you see these things, you're thinking, is that what I really saw, or is that what I really heard? But if you write these things down, it will help you keep up with it. What else might be going on? Various conditions can cause changes in memory, thinking, and behavior. Are there other health and lifestyle issues that could be contributing to these changes? Is there stress, diabetes, a change in medication, a change in the workforce or workplace, a change in lifestyle, a change in living environment? The third step is to learn about the signs and the benefits of early diagnosis. Now, you're already doing that right now by joining us with this program, but think about the person that you're concerned about. Have you noticed any of those warning signs in that person? Again, keep it in a notebook, write it down. Has anyone else noticed these changes that you have seen? So you want to talk to friends and family. And what, if any, changes have they noticed? Maybe everybody's keeping it to themselves, but when you begin to talk about it, then that, as we say, the dam breaks and the water starts flowing through, and they're saying, yes, these things were happening. I saw these examples. Now, the next thing you want to do after you've gathered your data and done your assessment is you want to prepare to have a conversation. And in that preparation, you need to find out who's going to be the one to discuss the concerns with the person. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's a trusted family member or a friend, or maybe it's a combination. It's usually best to speak one-on-one so that the person doesn't feel threatened or ambushed, but use what you know about the person to judge what approach might work best. After you have determined who should be the person, you then need to think about when and where should the conversation be held. It's important to have this conversation as soon as possible. And in addition to identifying the date and time, you should also consider where the person will feel most comfortable. I like to think of this as make sure no one is hangry, make sure they're not hungry, make sure that there's not noises, make sure there is not distractions. Make sure that the TV is not going in another room and that there are people going by in a public space. Find the place that makes your person feel most comfortable. What will you or the person in the conversation say? We like to suggest that you might want to build a script. Consider the following questions. I've noticed, fill in the blank in you. I've noticed that you're forgetting things. I've noticed that you have not been bathing lately. I've noticed you're not playing bridge any longer. And I'm concerned. Have you noticed this? Are you worried? Another question you might say is, how have you been feeling lately? You haven't seemed like yourself. And then another one could be, I noticed that you didn't go to play golf the past 2 weeks and you used to play every 3 days, and it worries me. Has something else like this happened? Are you not playing other things? Or I noticed that you went to the grocery store and you had a list for milk and bread and cereal, and you came back with salad. That seems a little off to me. Has that happened to you before? Are you worried about that? Step 8 is offer to go with your person to the doctor. Ask the person to see a doctor and offer to come with them. Try using encouraging words such as, there are a lot of things that could be causing this. Let's see if the doctor can help us figure out what's going on. The sooner we know what's causing these problems, the sooner we can address it. And I think it would give us both peace of mind if we talk to a doctor. I have a client who we're in the process of multiple tests. We had an MRI, we've had a CAT scan, we've had a nerve scan. We've been to this doctor. Checked his thyroid. They're looking for if there's a brain tumor. There's a number of they've modified his medications. There are a number of things that might be causing the dementia signs that we see with this person. So go to the doctor and get some things in place. If needed, you might have to have this conversation multiple times. And don't be discouraged if the first conversation is not as successful as you had hoped. Keep your notes and go back and review how it went so you can prepare for future conversations. Don't dismiss the changes you're noticing simply because the person is reluctant to address them or the conversation didn't go as planned. When I would talk with my father about driving and I would give him examples that his granddaughter had called me and said, please don't let me ride in the car with my grandfather any longer. And he would have an excuse for that day, what had happened. And then I would come back to him again with another example and another example. And eventually we all got on the same page with it. But don't be discouraged if it takes more than one conversation. And then the next thing that you and your person need to do is reach out for support. And that's where the Alzheimer's Association comes in. We have a free 24/7 helpline. And on that helpline are master's level clinicians who can provide reliable support and information, including how to have the conversation. If you turn to them for the support, then you are doing the first step for yourself as well. Make sure that your person sees a doctor. So most people address concerns about memory, thinking, and behavior with their primary care physician first. And I say that first because that's not the only physician. In most cases, the primary care physician may refer the person to a specialist for further evaluation. And these specialists might include a geriatrician who has additional training in medical care for diseases and conditions common among older adults, generally over the age of 65. They might also refer you to a neurologist who specializes in diseases of the brain and the nervous system. It's also important to note that not all neurologists specialize in Alzheimer's and other dementia. They have their own sets of specialties as well. So make sure you're looking for those details. A neuropsychologist, they can assess and diagnose and treat psychological disorders that are associated with brain-based conditions. And also some of those psychological orders can look like dementia when it's not dementia. Same way with psychiatrist and psychologist. Psychiatrists specialize in disorders that affect mood or the way the mind works, and psychologists have special training in testing memory and other functions. So now that we know what the signs to look for and how to approach, let's discuss the benefits of early detection. As I mentioned earlier, with an APOE4 gene, I am a fan of early detection for a variety of reasons, and we'll talk about some of those reasons in these next few slides.
There are a number of benefits in early detection of Alzheimer's. For one thing, a person is able to have a voice in what happens next. They can make plans. They can live life more on their own terms. They can also make plans for the future, financial plans, care plans. They can let people know what they want, which can be a real gift later on. It also allows time for families to make plans and to make decisions about who can do what and figure out care and those kinds of issues. Some people are interested in clinical trials. Clinical trials allow people to have access to treatments that aren't available yet. And for some people, that can be a really important thing to pursue. There are a number.
So paying attention to changes you notice in people, especially regarding memory, thinking, or behavior, is important for early detection. If you do observe unusual behaviors or occurrences, take action by having a conversation about what you've observed. Consider using the 10 steps that we discussed as a guide and customize it so you're approaching the person in the most supportive way possible. You know, there are a number of benefits to early detection, such as planning for the future, access to treatments for symptoms, and participation in clinical trials. So consider the importance of early detection. Let's talk about seeking a diagnosis. So I want to have a little test. There's no one here to see you raise your hand, but the question is, there's currently no way to diagnose Alzheimer's disease. Raise your hand if you think that is true, or raise your hand if you think that is false. I'm going to give it to you now. The answer is false. There are it was outdated belief that Alzheimer's could only be diagnosed at autopsy. There are a number of assessments and tests that make it possible for healthcare professions to diagnose Alzheimer's and other dementia with a high degree of certainty. However, determining the cause of dementia can sometimes be more difficult. Now, these are some of the tests that our fictional woman, Mary Garcia, took. She had this medical history and a physical exam. She had some lab tests and some mental cognitive status tests. But other assessments could include a screening for depression, interviewing with a close companion. They can do brain imaging or pull spinal fluid from your spine. Those are other tests that can be looked at. Do dementia-like symptoms always result in a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease or dementia? That is a good question. So the girls decided to send some text to each other, and they talk about that the appointments have been going well. And one daughter says, "Do you think that's really dementia?" And they said, "Well, we really need to talk to Dr. Soloway. Let's see what he will tell us about a diagnosis."
Someone could have high blood pressure that's out of control, or they might have a thyroid condition that's not regulated, or diabetes that's not right, or on a medication that actually can cause memory loss. Drinking too much alcohol can make memory worse. So there are a lot of factors that go into cognitive difficulty with aging that some of them can be remedied. And so we want to do everything we can to improve cognitive ability and quality of life.
So just as a review on seeking the diagnosis, this process will vary from person to person depending on an individual's specific situation and what the doctor feels is the right course of action for that person. The diagnosis may be something other than Alzheimer's or another dementia, which is why it's important to investigate the cause of the symptoms as soon as possible. Stigma and misconceptions about Alzheimer's, like nothing can be done about it, can deter some people from seeking a diagnosis. But getting information and support is a critical next step. So again, we're going to talk a little bit more about what the Alzheimer's Association offers. So what's next? So the girls wanted to talk about what they should do next, and they texted with each other as usual, and they come to the conclusion that they need to go to the Alzheimer's Association and see what help they can get at the Alzheimer's Association. And the Alzheimer's Association is a community across, they're in communities across the country, and they provide direct service to individuals and families who are facing the disease. We talked about this a little bit earlier. So what you see with that map is that the Alzheimer's Association is everywhere in our United States and also some. So the vision of the Alzheimer's Association is a world without Alzheimer's and other dementias. So remember, that is what we are looking for. We have 24/7 helplines. We have online communities, and we have communities nationwide. So let's talk about or listen to some care partners who've used these services.
There's been a couple of nights, 2 o'clock in the morning, you have questions, you have anxieties, and I was struggling dealing with them, and it's amazing. It was one of the best things I ever did was keeping the call center on my favorites now. Just to know that there's somebody you can call who is aware of what you're going through.
So we were talking about the different types of help that you can get 24/7. Let's listen to Teresa about the online support groups.
When I went to the Alzheimer's Association website, which is alz.org, there I was trying to find out more about what was Alzheimer's, what really is this disease, what is younger onset Alzheimer's, what is dementia, is there a cure, how long has this been around, how many people are affected by this, where can I go for resources, where can I go for help, what do I do with this? How can I handle this? Is there more people like me out there? Is there someone that I can talk to if I need to? And there I found the support line that's 24 hours a day. And there I found where I can go for workshops, where I can go and read things and postings that people have done, where I can find out what events is happening in the Alzheimer's Association, where I can see how it's affecting people around the globe.
And last but not least, alz.org/CRF, which is Community Resource Finder.
Since I've been diagnosed with dementia, the one place that I know I can go to for assistance and help and support is to the Alzheimer's Association. There are people there that I know by name that I can contact if I'm having a difficult time or if I'm struggling to find some resource, that they will provide that to me.
So as we come to near the end of our presentation, I want to remind you, we've looked at the basic disease and what resources, but let's see if we can talk about ways how you can help and ways you can join the fight. So some of the ways that you can help is volunteering. And whether you have just a few hours a week or more, then we would love to have you consider volunteering for the Alzheimer's Association. There are numerous opportunities available, including becoming a community educator like myself, or the walk, or the longest day. We also have advocacy. So advocacy may be as simple as writing some letters from your home, making some phone calls to your local representatives or your state representatives or your national representatives, federal representatives, to talk about how Alzheimer's can help. I mean, how the Alzheimer's Association can help people with Alzheimer's. So advocacy is good. There's also a program called Trial Match. I'm involved with Trial Match, and it's as simple as sitting at home, and once a quarter I get a brain game that they come over and they want me to do some testing, and I've been doing it for years. And it's good for me because it helps me see where my baseline is, but it's also good for the Alzheimer's Association. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the Walk to End Alzheimer's, we've just done all of those walks in New York City and across the country, and those happen traditionally in the fall. And last but not least, one of my favorite events is the Longest Day, which happens on, you guessed it, the longest day, which is the summer solstice, June 21st. And you can do things all year round for that, but the Longest Day is a very fun and interesting way to get involved with the Alzheimer's Association. So again, here we have the 800 number. ALZ.org is also the website. And if you have questions, I'm going to stop sharing. And I lost my chat when I got kicked off. So Natalia, if you want to read the questions, that would be great, because I think there were some there, maybe.
Yes, I currently don't see one, but would love to invite our attendees to ask any questions either in the Q&A box or in the chat box. I believe someone asked earlier about if the PowerPoint would be available anywhere online. I shared that the presentation will definitely be available, the recorded presentation, and where they can see the PowerPoint.
The materials are also sent to you, Natalia, so you can send to all the participants after the program. So be on the lookout for that, everyone.
Any other questions? We try to be very thorough, but we also want to make sure that you have the freedom to get some questions answered at this time. So Natalia, what's your next presentation going to be?
Well, I was just going to say, I hope that you guys would join us. We are going to do another presentation on living with Alzheimer's early stage. It's a 3-part series in January. So please be on the lookout for that. Also check out our events page and please join us. Obviously, we want to continue this conversation and just educate ourselves so that we can best support our loved ones. So if there are no further questions, I wonder, one came up, I wonder if this presentation is done in Spanish?
Oh,
I think it is. But I saw it on, I thought I saw it, June, I may be wrong.
So we do have Spanish speaking. I wish I could speak Spanish, but I can't. My colleagues do. And if you do want to tune into some of the Spanish presentations, you can definitely, tune into some of our programs too that we have at the Alzheimer's Association. The direct Spanish PowerPoint presentation, I'll need to see if we are able to send it out. Usually we aren't able to send out direct PowerPoints, but we'll definitely, I'll send all the information for the Spanish programs to Natalia.
Wonderful. And I will certainly be forwarding that information by the end of the day, by the end of the business day today. But if there are no further questions, just want to thank Cynthia and Joon again for your time with us, for sharing with us. And also to our attendees, thank you so much for coming. Again, I just want to reiterate, we will be continuing this conversation. So please feel free to log into our events page. We have a 3-part series starting in January the 12th. It's living with Alzheimer's early stage, so please feel free to join us. I'll also send out a link to you guys so that you can register. And if you have some time available, please join us for Qigong tomorrow, just to take care of ourselves along the way as we're supporting other loved ones. So
Hey, Natalia,
Yes.
I want to, one more thing. I see that Pepita mentioned that she was fully bilingual and would volunteer to translate. So June, that might be somebody that you want to speak to. I'm not sure. I'm sure you have some need for volunteers
Yeah,
on the bilingual
absolutely.
side.
Yeah, and then
Do you want to put your email contact for Pepita or anybody else?
that would be for Cody for volunteering. So
But could you put that in the chat for Pepita?
here, let me put my email.
Yeah.
So I can connect you to Cody as well.
Yeah. So Pepita, I think if you send a note to June, then he can get you in the right direction, because I know we'd love to have you, right, June? I'm speaking for him.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you both so much, and thank you to our attendees once again. And yeah, we'll be in touch. If we don't see each other during the rest of the month, we'll see each other hopefully in January again for another
Have a
presentation.
great holiday.
Happy
You
holidays,
too.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Natalia.